Prison officers have been ordered to stop calling criminals convicts on the grounds that it is offensive. Civil servants at the Prison Service headquarters have also instructed warders to drop the phrase ex-con for former prisoners and refer to them instead as persons with lived experience. I mean, yeah, lived experience of committing a burglary or a rape, or prison leavers. I mean, some staff have been left shaking their heads at a time when jails are suffering from record overcrowding and their colleagues are leaving in droves. This is going on. Joining me to discuss this is former prisoner and founder of the charity User Voice and lived expert, Mark Johnson MBE. Mark, thanks so much for joining us.
Hello.
Is it offensive to call an ex-prisoner an ex-con?
Well, I think the PR around this issue is a bit of a car crash from the Ministry of Justice, and the Civil Service, I think, have got a really poor track record with sending very clear, sort of purpose-driven bits of communications out. I mean, the fundamental principle behind it is right, and it's one that I've campaigned on probably for a very long time now, and that is that when people get sentenced, they serve their sentence in a prison or a criminal justice order, and post that sentence, we need to reintroduce them into society in a way that doesn't stigmatise them. So currently, at 11 years old, if you commit an offence, that criminal conviction can stay with you for the rest of your life. So it's like a life sentence by instalments through the stigma that's associated with it. If you look at the history, not so much the prison service, because I don't actually think anybody is bothered what they get called, because at the moment, 80% of British prisons are on 22 hours a day bang up. Now, what that really means is the UN wrote a ruling through Nelson Mandela, actually, his incarceration, and it said anything over 22 hours a day bang up could be identified as torture. Yeah. And that's what we've got going on in British prisons. We've got these things they call
22 hours bang up. Just to clarify, that means 22 hours being locked up. Is that in solitary confinement or just confined to a cell?
So cells are solitary confinement. That's literally the current. So you mentioned about staff leaving in their droves. Chris Grayling started the rehabilitation revolution, and literally so many prison staff left at that point or got fired, and they've never been able to recoup the level of staffing from pre-2010. And so then when COVID hit, they recruited loads more staff. But because the lockdown conditions were such at a level of like 23 and a half hour a day bang up, as soon as those restrictions got eased a little bit, all the staff left because they'd never been used to dealing with prisoners before. So right. I can tell the public via your show that they're being ripped off on a royal level because all the supply chains that are going into education, therapeutic, etc., they can't get access to prisoners because they're behind a door, and the regime is such, they call it restricted regime. If you imagine, like you said about rapists, and this is the sort of media top line of it. That's not who we lock up predominantly. Do you know what I mean? Who we lock up are the drug addicts, mentally ill, neurodiverse, etc., predominantly, and all we're doing is neglecting them. They call these distraction packs colouring books and remedial, like maths and English, being shoved underneath the door without any teachers, without any teacher support, and then those people are coming out in our society literally unrehabilitated, and we've paid the same amount of money as what we did when the staffing was at full regime.
Yeah, I mean, it seems ridiculous to not rehabilitate people, and if people are locked up for 22 hours a day, like you say, there aren't the opportunities to, even if there are classes, people going in, running programs, they won't have that access, that contact with the prisoner to run those classes. And without breaking that link, people are going to come out and reoffend again with, burglary or whatever acquisitive crime to feed a drug habit.
Well, 4 in 10 people leaving British prisons today leave homeless, right? They're given tents to go into the community with. The probation service, who are supposed to be this body that literally works with prisoners supporting them and planning for their release. They're at 100% capacity. That's what they say. What I know from basically people that are coming out of prison is that they're completely neglected. Again, they're not even getting basic GP appointments, referrals to drug centres. I mean, under this government, they've literally closed down about 2/3 of all drug rehabilitation centres in this country as well. So the services just aren't there. And I think recently, Dominic Raab, who's no longer there, and I'm very grateful for that. I've never really get political in my life, but what basically he was doing is fanning the flame around sensational and polarised views of everybody's a murderer in prison, and then pinning the need to remove us from the European Courts of Human Rights on the back of it. And that is literally getting politics meddling into sentencing, which I think is really dangerous because the public is educated via the media. And I have to say, it's not an education at all. Do you know what I mean? It's just literally, It doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's literally, you're going to be paying for it. Their proposal is 20,000 new prison places of this neglect. And we need to start to talk about what works regarding rehabilitation. We have to do that. And so if it means, yeah.
So no, I was just going to say. I mean, we've got to wrap it up soon, unfortunately. Yeah. But I mean, what would you say? Bring it back to the original point. What would you say is the correct term to refer to former prisoners using?
Well, it's not that you could call me anything you want to, right? I don't care. But the key is about when I go for housing insurance, I've helped thousands of people. I've got an MBE and everything. When I go for house insurance, it says, have I got a criminal conviction? Right? And it was over 30 years ago. I have to say yes, and I have to pay a premium that's higher than anybody else's.
That's ridiculous, because surely the last house that's going to get burgled is an excon. You put that on the door, nobody's going to want you. You're not going to want that guy coming down the stairs with a golf club. It's ridiculous. Anyway, Mark, thanks so much for joining us tonight. That's Mark Johnson, the former prisoner and founder of the charity. Use Your Thoughts. Thank you, Mark. He's an MBE. And my esteemed panel, Francis, what do you make of that? You look a bit like you could have been banged up.
Yeah, if I was banged up, I wouldn't last very long, mate. I'd pick the option of a women's prison. Yeah. You know what I mean? I'd get, what's it called? Prison onset gender dysphoria.
Yeah, I don't think you'd need to specify that. I think they'd put you in one of them anyway. Cressida.
My jaw's on the floor, 22 hours a day.
Like Francis if he went to prison.
I thought this is what we joined Amnesty International for, is that 22 hours a day? I'm just stunned. I didn't know that.
23.5 hours during lockdown, which is, I mean, we talk about the impact of lockdown. I mean, I hadn't even thought of the impact on the prison population.
Right. I mean, you'd take your pet hamster out of the cage for longer than that, wouldn't you? It's just, I'm absolutely stunned. That's horrific. And the idea that we think people are being rehabilitated and actually they're being given a workbook under the door. I mean, disgusting.
It's absolutely horrific, because you think, these people have ended up in jail. Actually, that is a chance for us as a society to help rehabilitate these people. So actually, when they go out, they're not going to re-offend. Yeah, it's a chance.
And it would also help the economy. I mean, the economy is starved of workers at the moment. So if we could reskill and rehabilitate some prisoners, they can go in and become prison wardens.
Yeah, exactly. Poacher turned gatekeeper. But if all we're doing is effectively locking them up and leaving these people to rot, you go. I mean, that is torture, isn't it? Yeah. 22 hours in a cell? I mean, that is horrific.
I mean, they do have a PlayStation 5. But anyway...